Hello, my name is Ildiko.
And I'm Phil.
And this is the My Open Source Experience podcast.
Open source is an incredibly social art.
Open source is innovation.
Open source is enabling.
Open source is community.
And open source is weird.
Open source is incredibly important.
Open source is hard.
Open source is engaging.
Open source is collaboration.
Open source is like running the show.
Open source is ubiquitous.
Open source is, well, my life.
And open source is not free.
Before we dive in, let me give you some important reminders. People on the podcast participate as individuals. They do not represent any company or organization. All the thoughts and opinions are theirs. People share their stories and experiences, the way how they went through them and how they remember them, and reflect how those experiences affected their lives, influenced their decisions and their careers back then or ever since. Welcome to the My Open Source Experience podcast. In this episode, Phil and I are chatting with Uriel Ofir about challenges that new contributors face when they are trying to find an open source project to contribute to and trying to get involved. Think about things like language barriers, time zone differences, and more. And we are talking about a regional community named Maakaf that is trying to address these challenges and help contributors to find projects and open source projects to find new contributors. Enjoy the show. Uriel, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your tech background, and what do you do?
I'm a junior programmer. I had a shift in my life, so only in the last years I'm on the programming world. 2 years of working as a programmer, mostly JavaScript, Node.js, full stack.
Can you also tell us a little bit about how did you learn about open source? What was your first experience?
It's about 11 years ago, something like that. I heard a podcast about the history of open source, and Richard Stallman was interviewed there, and all the story of open source was really interesting for me. The idea that you can share knowledge and that it's complicated. Already, I understood that. In the podcast, he talked about that if you want free software or a commercial software and knowledge is worth has a value, so it's worth money eventually. So it was interesting to me the idea of sharing knowledge, and so it was in my head that open source is interesting me. Eventually, I went to programming, and then I wanted to be part of the open source project. And also, people told me that if you will contribute to open source, it can help for your career, and it sounded a good idea. I tried to understand what is going on and to look on GitHub what is going on, but I didn't manage to do that. So it was in my heart, kind of a pain I got because of that I want to be part of open source community and activity, but I don't know how to get into that. A year ago, I got the idea, okay, I think I have an idea that can help people that while they are looking for their next job, they can start contribute to open source. Last year, I started open source community in Israel called Maakaf. And the main goal of the community is to help programmers to start contributing to open source, to understand how it works.
When you started the community, was the main motivation to help people to start contribute to open source projects?
Yeah, the main idea was that I had the question for myself. Like I wanted to contribute to open source, but I didn't find the way how to do that. So what started my idea and thinking that I went to a meetup and there was a lecture about React component library that a programmer from Monday told what she's doing in her work in this project. And then when she ended to speak, she said, and it's open source on GitHub. I checked it and I thought to myself, okay, a React component library is something that it's not very hard to contribute. and I know that there is an Israeli team that is working on this code. So I thought, okay, if I have this project, then maybe I can find more projects like that in Israel that are not too tough to connect and contribute. It can be a good start for people to start contribute to open source, because what I felt is that the basic problem is that you just don't find a project to contribute. You're looking in GitHub and get lost. This was my experience while I wanted to contribute to open source voluntarily. And I started with this idea, and I just wrote to people on LinkedIn, do you want to contribute to open source while you are looking for your next job? And step by step, eventually we started to find more projects that are relevant. We wrote and we did YouTube videos about starting to contribute to open source. What do you need to do in GitHub? What is fork and pull requests and the basic things. Step by step, the community grew and became the success that we get today.
In your experience, when you were trying to first engage in open source projects, was it due to the lack of understanding of the tools, or you had said that you actually had a hard time finding a project that was interesting enough for you to contribute to, or was it response from the community when you said, hey, I want to help, what can I do? Can you talk a little bit about what were the stumbling blocks you ended up hitting, and hence I expect the things that your community works hard to kind of help get through?
I think the basic thing that was missing for me is people. Eventually, you have all the data in GitHub, but when no one's tell you if you are in the right place, where are you going? I just felt that I'm getting lost with too much data and too much project, and I don't understand. Like the things that I tell to people today that are joining our community that are different than what they would think in first ideas that they have. That I don't think that to try to contribute through first good issue is the best way to start. I tell people just try to run the program in your computer. It's hard enough, and this should be the starting point. And no one told me that before, and now I know to tell this to the community members that I think this is a basic thing, and it's and also that you can just today I talked to someone and he asked me if he can join to open source, and I talked with him, and it was look like he don't have enough time because to contribute to a project it takes a lot of time. But I told him, so you don't have to be a contributor. You can run the project locally and learn about it and write what you learn from the project, and it can help other people to get engaged with the project, and maybe they will be available to contribute. So eventually, I already said here things that I learned from the past in the community, but I think the basic is that you talk with someone, and in our community, we have a list of projects that we know that in each project you have Israeli guy to speak with him about the project. If it's mostly it's the maintainer of the project that is Israeli and he's the maintainer, and I think this is what was most missing for me, and it's most helpful now in our community.
Was that because like
Language barrier or
time zone, or just you feel that this is helpful to you and others as well to be able to connect to someone within your region, to be able to talk about the
project and
figure out how to contribute, how to, or well, take the first step and how to even install the thing?
I think that it's important that the community is regional. It's we speak in Hebrew in the community. As you can see, English is not my first language. I understand and I can speak English, but not totally fluently. And it's much more easier to speak with people in Hebrew. We are in the same time zone, in the same culture. Yeah, I think it's help, and it's much more easier than to connect to a global project when I need to not only get to a code project that's it's a hard thing by itself. I need to get done with other stuff of communication and understand the people in the community. And if it's a local community, so I can jump to the code much more easily.
In the community that you've built up, is there any cohesiveness with regard to technology, or is it more the core value that brings everybody together is really just the desire to engage in open source? Sometimes again in between jobs, like you said. So is there a technology that binds it, or are the projects kind of all over the place?
It's just the concept of open source. We have projects in many technologies and programming languages, and the only term for a project to be in our community is that the maintainer is available and the project is active and getting pull requests. We have already projects that were in the community and then stopped to be maintained, or as the maintainer is not available, so we dropped them out. Yeah, I think it's very important that it's not only for one project. It's also kind of a problem that if you only have a community for a project, so if you're not connected to the project, you don't have any connection to open source. So in our community, if you like the concept of open source, you can be even not a contributor, but just helper for other people in the community, and you kind of contribute to open source. If someone tries to change something in a code and he doesn't understand, and someone can help him, even if it's not a project that he's very familiar with and kind of connected just to this project. So if you know programming and you have the time to help someone, maybe you can help him. And yeah, it's very helpful that it's kind of a atmosphere of open source, and not only for one project or technology, but a place to gather people together about this subject of open source.
When it comes to your community, like do you have sessions to educate people about open source? Because it sounds like that you probably have people who are just learning about it. Is the community kind of a place where people can share knowledge and that's kind of the main purpose, or is it a place where you connect people, like you connect the newcomers to maintainers and projects?
Well, I think it's the two goals that you mentioned. It's also sharing knowledge and also connecting people. And I think it's working well together, because it's easier to share knowledge with people than just documentation and text that you don't have engagement with anyone. And it's also better to connect with people when you have a goal that you have together. So it's worked well. And also you remind me that we had in the past, I hope that we will have it again, but in such a community that is about volunteering, so always we have a lack of resources. So we had a volunteer for that in the past, but now we are looking for someone that will run it again. We had something we called open source parties, and it's just video meetings where people mostly with no background, but anyone is welcome. And we are speaking about open source, and the idea what we are doing is that anyone is welcome to introduce himself, and then the volunteer from the community tells him, and mostly tell everyone kind of the same thing. If you don't know anything, so you can contribute to the practice project that we have, that you only add text to a website and do it with fork and the GitHub technique to contribute to open source. So you will have kind of basic experience to understand what is going on. And if you already know something like that, so what programming language do you know, and what project you can see in our community? So it's data that you can read all that in our website, but it's very different when you see someone face to face and he tells you that, and then you feel that, okay, and if I don't understand something, I can ask in this community and I'm welcome. Yeah, I really like these sessions of open source parties that we had. In the beginning, I did it, but eventually it really takes time. And someone replaced me, and after that, he couldn't go on with that. So now we don't have it, but we still have a very active community. We have a WhatsApp group and Discord server. So and we have a physical meetup every month. So I hope also that we will get back to the open source parties. But even now, without it, the community is very welcoming.
Do you work with any community that is global but have maintainers in your region, or are all the projects that you are collaborating with local currently?
Yeah, for now, all the projects are local. I think mostly it's because, as I said, we are a lack of resources. So it's just easier for people in Israel to find our community. I I don't have the ability to run after a project and people and explain them. But I do have a dream that a community like what we made in Israel will have other community like it other places. Someday it will happen, I think. And I even tried. I connected. I wrote about my idea in Twitter and tried to connect it to programmers, and I have connection with a programmer from Nigeria, and but eventually we didn't manage to open their community. It's a lot of work to build this kind of community, but I think we made it. So after the first month, there was a lot of investing to build it. Now I feel that the community is stable and we are just growing. But to keep it stable, it's much easier now than to start it.
How many people are in your community?
It's around 1,500. We have Discord server and WhatsApp and the meetings, and we have around 20 projects, and we are still getting bigger. So I hope that next time that we will talk, we'll have bigger numbers. But the most important that the activity is just working. Projects come, projects go, people come, people contribute. There are always discussions and monthly meetups that are going well. It's good what we have now, and we do have dreams that we will have more people in our community and more projects and maybe go more globally. And eventually it's also maybe I will get a sponsor and we get more resources so I can take the community forward with more roadmap and time and because the community is like, well, this is how I manage the community and other volunteers that join me is the people do what they can. So it's mostly about the opportunities. If a project comes, so is welcome, but we don't have the ability to write a roadmap what we want to do and just do it. We try as much we can, then something goes great. And like I told you about open source parties that we just don't have volunteer. This is the situation. But other thing we have meetup school.
What is your next goal for the community?
The main goal that I'm trying to get forward is that the community will help programmers to find their next job. I found out that in Israel there are not a lot of understanding to open source, and I thought it would be easier because we have, as I said, 1,500 people in the community, so we have very talented programmers that are looking for the next job, but we didn't yet manage to do a total connection between a employer and an employee. So we're working on that. I know that the community helped some people, and also myself, I found kind of a freelance job from with a connection from the community. But I really hope that it will work eventually much better, and that companies will just come to the community and ask, hey, we want to meet very talented programmers from the open source community and give them opportunity to work in our company. This didn't happen yet. And I will add some things that I think it's also a very good idea because eventually I think a lot of jobs people get them from a friend. A friend is giving a job to a friend. It's a phrase in Hebrew. I don't sure that I have a good phrase in English for that. And open source is kind of a opportunity to people to show their abilities and their talent just with the code, and it's all open in GitHub. You can see what they are doing, and also if they did a pull request and it was merged, so only with this data you can know, okay, this is a programmer that it's not a personal project. It's someone that is a senior programmer approved this code, so you kind of have more liability about this person. And I think it's a great way to see the abilities of a programmer and to think if you want to take him to your company. And it's give opportunity to people outside of the circles of friends that give the job to a friend or the university. It's the idea. We didn't manage to do it yet, but you can do a good job as open source contributor and then get your next job. It happens, of course, but we hope to do it more.
Do you have any plans to try to put more structure around that building of the professional network of those that are in your community and successfully getting jobs, and how they can help give a leg up to others in the community or anything? You working on any strategy that way?
Our next meetup is about this subject, and we are mostly trying to connect to recruiters and tell them about this idea. Yeah, what we learned is that in our region in Israel, recruiters um, they don't know about what is open source. Like we had a question in the community, a discussion. When you write your resume, how you should describe your open source contribution, and eventually we got to the conclusion that the recruiters, no one tells them about this thing of contributing to open source, and if you write it in your resume, they don't know how to look about it. So it's better just to write it as a kind of a personal project, and tell what you did in a project, not tell them contribute to open source. And especially in Hebrew, we don't have a good translation to contribute to open source. It's the same word in Hebrew, to contribute and to donate money. So people that don't understand anything about it say, "Why you want my money? Why do you want my money? Why people?" Yeah, we feel that we need to tell about open source to the industry in Israel, so that we will know about it better.
That is very interesting in terms of language barriers, that open source and donating money is the same word. And how that just comes against of what you're trying to achieve. Because I mean, especially in case of open source, that used to be called free software, and they changed the name because calling it free, people connect to, free of charge. It doesn't cost you money. But that was not the point. The point was that you have access to the source code, and that's not just to grab and use that source code, but also to share that knowledge so people can work together on improving it, fixing it, maintaining it. So the whole concept is not about giving something away for free and kind of donate that to the ecosystem, but also to give you grounds to be able to collaborate with others. So they changed free software to open source software. So it's interesting to learn that in a different language than English, it is still a challenge. Even
It's a
on
different challenge. In Hebrew, you don't have a problem with free software. It's not connected to free of money. It's different words. But when you get to contribute and donate, it's the same word. So this is the problem that we have.
Can you tell a story or two of a project where you said you ran into a maintainer that didn't seem to be receptive to taking things in? Do you have an example of a challenge like that?
It's not a challenge, because if someone joins the community, so it means that he wants to get contributions, and he's open to the idea of the community. But many times after a month or two, so you understand, okay, it doesn't work. And I tell it to anyone that adds a project to the community that if it doesn't work, so we automatically move it to the archive, and we stop sharing it. And it happens all the time, because I don't like it, but most of the projects that we have are volunteering projects. We have one project that was from Checkmark's company, but they stopped it. So for now, we have mostly volunteering projects of private people, and I hope that we will find companies that like the idea to open their already open source projects, or maybe to open such projects. So we will have projects that are more with more resources and more big and all that. It's funny that eventually I found out that the basic React library that I told you of the Monday company, it's open source, but it's not open to contributions. So I'm happy that they gave us the idea, but eventually we didn't manage to collaborate with them. Yeah, and this is also something I learned, that there is a big difference between open source code that, okay, you can see all the code in GitHub or anywhere you want. And this is one thing that the code is open, and other thing that it's open to contribution. I think most of the open source code isn't really open to contribution. It's mostly just open code. Maybe if you will find a very specific bug and you will say to the maintainer, I have a specific way to fix it and it's good, so we'll take it. But if you will offer a new feature or try to be really connected to the project, so most of the project, I don't think they are open to that.
It depends. I would say that there's a pretty big spectrum.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
you,
Yeah.
meaning that there are certainly projects that fundamentally don't want contribution. They're just out there dropping code and that's all they're doing. There are other projects where the maintainers want something to be done in a very specific way. So your forced attempt at making that contribution might not be taken. And depending on the type of response that the maintainer gives you, you may give up or you may try a different path. And this is where, being a maintainer that is helpful with those that are trying to contribute, it's a big, that's part of that spectrum, right? But
Yeah,
in
yeah.
my experience, it's often the case that the first time you try to bring a feature, particularly if you haven't been around the project for its entire existence, something similar might have been tried and it failed, or there are others that don't really like that kind of feature, so you'd have to do it in a different way. So there's a lot of negotiation and compromise.
Yeah.
And it's easy to, again, depending on the way that's phrased to you from the maintainer, you may just give up and say, well, they don't want it. Or it may be the case that, there's another path to get that functionality in, just maybe not quite the way that you originally expected it. And so, like I said, it's somewhat of a spectrum. Have you had cases like that where you've had to start and then maybe redirect and go a different way to get something in, or has that
I
really
think
occurred
in our
much?
community, the problem is more basic, but also different between projects, that how much it's hard to get into the project. And because our community members are volunteering, they're not, I think a lot of open source contributions are coming from users of the software, that they are programmers and they can add code to a program that they are using. So it's a win-win situation for them. But in our community, it's just the concept of, okay, I like to write code, and now I'm looking for my next job, so I have time, and I want to find a project that I can be part of. If the project onboarding is too much tough and hard to start, so it's not very relevant to our community. So most of the projects are not very big, and it's kind of the next phase and the next challenge for our community, that we will have deeper and more meaningful contributions for a long time, and it's challenging. And about this thing, we are looking for the way to do it, and that people will be connected to a project for long periods and not just come and go.
In your community, Uriel, have you spent any time going through the inbound side of open source? You just made the statement, you can't write code without using an open source library or, some significant portions of open source as part of what you're building. And to be able to be a good programmer and a rounded software developer, to bring that in, you need to understand the licenses of that code. You need to understand basically the community, and if indeed they can take contributions back, if you find a bug and so forth. As well as, for example, the Linux Foundation has a couple of different classes on what to look for from a security standpoint in open source projects that you would look to select to bring into your development environment. These are all skills that are also should be important to recruiters. I'm not sure how much they're actually looking. Usually, from a recruiter standpoint, what I see is a specific technology, right?
Yeah.
Developer experienced in Kubernetes, developer experienced in Linux or Yocto or whatever. It's more about the technology, but that implies that you actually know something about both how to bring software in to a corporate development environment, as well as how to get things fixed in an upstream community on which you rely. So those aspects about bringing software in, do you do anything in your community to kind of talk about that, or point folks to resources to learn about there?
No, the community is not yet in this point. Most of the projects are voluntarily projects, and they don't have a lot of issues about security and licensing.
Is the community working on materials like when you said that it's about knowledge sharing and education? Are you creating materials where people can learn about open source?
Yeah, so we have the open source practice project that it's a simple website. We wrote explanation how you can contribute text to this website to add a text MD file, and it's really helpful. I think we have kind of hundreds of forks for this project, and I must say that I didn't, of course, not in Hebrew, but even globally, it's hard to find such a project in GitHub. Maybe there is, but a project just to practice how to do a pull request from your fork and open source contribution. I think in the past I found before I made our local repository for that for the practicing, I found something of from India, something like that, but it was hard to find it, and also the Indian project eventually they shut it down. So it's something, it's a very basic idea. People want to practice, and it's not that you need to do something very complicated, just a GitHub repo. So we do things like that. I know that this open source practice project really helped for many people. And we try to tell to the maintainers also that in their project, we'll write a good onboarding to help people to connect to the project. Not enough, but we try to collect the knowledge that we have in the community, and we write about it in our website, and some of it I just tell to people when I talk with them. Yeah, I think a lot of things it's just different from the first site. What someone thought, like people looking, is there issues in the project? I think it's not a question, because in any code, it's for sure if you get into it, you will find things to fix and to improve. So it's just not a question if it has issues or not. And most, I think, at least when someone just get into a project, it's much more easier. Just start with a project, run it locally, start to understand the code. You will surely find something that you can think about that you can fix, and then write your own issue. But to understand issues that someone else wrote, maybe he wrote nonsense. You can't even know that, and you will try hard to understand what he wants in the issue, and it won't help you to get into the project. So many knowledge like that is going on, but maybe one day we will write it or do it orderly. But it's very good that it's a community, so people just ask in the WhatsApp, I'm starting, how can I start to contribute? And for each project, we have a Discord channel, so people can talk with our maintainer and with other contributors that already connected to the project. So there is kind of by heart knowledge that is not written, that is going on in the community, and people can also say, this project is nicer than this, and not everything is written.
In your experience, is the tooling that's hardest for people to learn and get into? Like you mentioned that people like to practice how to do a pull request. Is that the hardest, or are there other challenges as well that people have who come to the community and say that I want to do open source, but I'm totally lost?
I think the hardest is the loneliness, that people want to know that they are going in the right path. Like if you're starting a job, you have a manager and he can tell you, okay, what you're doing is good or not good enough, and you need to improve. In open source, it's kind of like a jungle. Like, okay, there is a project. Okay, it seems interesting, but what is going on is that the maintainer is doing things. If you have a community, they are talking about things, and I just don't understand what is going on. And people just want someone that will look at them and will explain them what is going on. It's better after a project is doing that. So try to write it and that it will be easy to tell people. Okay, thank you for applying and connecting with us. Now do these steps. And if you have any problem, you can ask. And I want to say in the perspective of the maintainers that I'll tell them also, please don't help people too quickly. Like if someone tells you, okay, can you sit with me for an hour to help me start running the project? So no, your time is precious, and if you will help too much easily, you will be frustrated eventually. So, tell them, if someone doesn't start to run the project locally by himself, so I don't think he would be a good contributor to your project. Like, maybe he won't manage to do it, and he will try, and then he will have problem when he's trying to run the project locally. So, okay, you have problem, so now ask, and we will try to help you. But if he didn't do anything and he just say, okay, I see it's going to be hard for me, so you, the maintainer, please help me, give you an hour with you. So it's very frustrating. So it's kind of a game to find the balance, how much to help, and the other way, how much to give people. You must be active, and I can't help you totally. You need to be individual and take care for yourself, and it's I think we like the rule that tell to maintainers, don't help anyone before he tries to run the project locally. I think this is a good rule that I found.
Do you have feedback from project maintainers that it became maybe easier for them to onboard new people since they are participating in your project and community?
Yeah, of course. First of all, just to connect to people, because if you are a maintainer and you need to collect programmers from LinkedIn or I don't know where, or maybe you will go to communities of programmers that are in the technology of your project, but eventually you need people that are in the mindset of open source, and it's more important even than the technology, because if someone has the time and the motivation, he can learn things while contributing. Um, so if you're Israeli maintainer of a project, you come to our community, Maakaf, and you say, I have this project and you are welcome to contribute. So this is really helpful. And there are projects that for a long time they didn't have contributors, and when they connected to the community, they got it. As I said earlier, now the challenge is how to maintain contributors for a long time, and people are coming and going, and this frustrates maintainers. But the basic thing of connecting people to open source project in Israel, our community became the place to do that.
So does a project have to be, sourced with maintainers in Israel to be able to solicit your community?
Just someone that is connected to the project and understand how to contribute to it, and it can be the man that help others in Israel to connect to the project. We have also something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's some project maintainer out there that watches this podcast and goes, another possible source of developers for my project, let me reach out to Uriel. That would be an okay thing.
Yeah, even if he doesn't have any connection in Israel, he can connect me, and then I will connect him to the community. And he needs to find only one that will connect to his project, and then this one can give can get more developer
Okay.
firms connected. And I do say I feel also that the maintainers, they don't have enough the mind that they need to look further more than the code itself. Like, every maintainer can come and say, okay, this is my repo in GitHub, and I want you to open me a Discord channel. But then you need to communicate with the people in the community, and a lot of maintainers they don't have this mindset. And I think with not a lot of effort, they can have more people that will help them, and sometimes they join the community and eventually don't keep and go away, but they didn't really try, because it's not enough to add your. In the beginning, it was enough because we had a few projects, so we just added your project, and this is what was in the small list of 5 projects. So people that want to contribute will get to your project. But now we have around 20 projects, so people are looking for a specific project, and if you don't convince them why to contribute to your project, so there are few that are very active and the others coming and going. This is what we have now, and the projects that are more active in the community, the projects that the maintainer or someone is kind of marketing them and help people to connect. So I'm happy that and this is the goal of the community, to be a platform. We can't do the job for the maintainers, but we really help them because they have the crowd that they are looking for, people that want to contribute.
I was just going to say, as you've said before, to build a community takes effort. right?
Yeah.
Be it the community that you've constructed or one that a maintainer needs to build. It's far beyond the code. To build a community takes effort.
I think that a lot of people don't understand that just in the global communities either. My full-time job is to help communities in various things that they need in order to be successful and sustainable. And many of them, either the ones that I work with or the ones that I contributed to, a lot of them are facing a lot of very similar or the same challenges that you mentioned, that it's not just about the technology, it's not just about the code. You have to put energy and effort into community building. You have to reach out to people, you have to be able to onboard them, because at least some communities that I worked with in like one way or the other, they even if someone tries to install their project, their tool, and the person doesn't succeed, sometimes the community is not even equipped to answer a few questions. And it's one thing that the person doesn't try, as you said. If they don't even try and they just expect someone to handhold them, that is, I say too that there needs to be more motivation than that. But if the person does try and they got stuck because maybe it's not that easy to install that particular project, then if you're not helping them, if you don't have a troubleshooting guide, and if you don't answer their questions and they are not succeeding with installing the thing and trying it out, then how do you expect them to ever even try to contribute anything, because they couldn't even get the hands-on experience of the thing doing anything. So it is, sometimes it's really hard to get those maintainers or committers, whatever term we are using, for the people who are stable around the project and maintaining it and reviewing patches and letting them in. So if they are not prepared at all to build a community, then it's very hard to actually do that. Do you have any like a big success story that you could share? Something that you first achieved, then you were like, okay, this is working.
Ah, something that I remember that the first PR from the community, it was in our Discord. We have video meetings in the Discord. So I only had an idea. But when I started it, I didn't know if it will work or not. I just thought, okay, I had this problem. I wanted to contribute to open source, and I think I have a way to help people doing that. Let's see if it's working. And then, yeah, it was a personal project of a senior developer that wrote a web app of chess mazes. And it was his personal project, and then he bring it to the community, and there was a first commit and a first pull request from a volunteer from the community. It's not a, I said, wow, it's working. I got this man and this woman, and they're working together, and they did the pull request. Oh, wow, that was very cool. We just had first anniversary of the community, and I had a lecture there. I talked about what we had in the community. So one of the slides was the first PR, and I put a link for this because yeah, it was a small but a very meaningful milestone to understand. Okay, it's working, and it's a win-win situation, and it's also not very connected to open source, but more to the interest of the community members, that a junior developer wants to be guided by someone that is more experienced than him, and someone that is experienced, he wants someone else to do the hard job of things that he know what should be done, but it takes time, and maybe he can just guide someone else to do that. So when I saw the first PRs, I saw it happening because it was good to the both sides. The senior programmer had this side project that he liked of the chess mazes, and he didn't have really the time to get it forward. And the junior developer, she wanted to write a code and that someone will review it, and it's working. Yeah, it's really cool.
Do you have any examples of people sticking around the project that they got in touch with through your community, or that is still fully work in progress to have people become kind of long-term contributors?
No, I think that the community is too much young for that, and open source takes time. Like it's also something that people need to understand that a week in open source, it's fine. If it takes time to someone to respond to it, it's fine. It's not must to be that every day that there's a contribution to the or a new commit in the project. So I think now in 1 year it's earlier to say.
Can you tell us something about yourself that has nothing to do with tech and nothing to do with open source?
I kind of producing a podcast. And now it's only from time to time, but I just like to speak with interesting people. So I record with them a Zoom video and then upload it to a podcast. So I really like this hobby, and from time to time I'm doing that.
Looks like we share the same hobby.
The problem with podcasts is that you just don't have enough time to hear all the podcasts. But so at least I say to myself, I produce the podcast that I want to hear. People that I think is worth interviewing, and okay, so why should I wait that someone will interview them? Well, let's do it by ourselves.
And with that, that's all, folks. That was our episode for today. We want to hear from you. Please leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments section of the platform where you're following the podcast. This season is full of very interesting topics. For instance, open source licenses, culture within communities as well as companies, mentorship programs, open source within companies, or in other words, why does HR have to know what free and open source software is? Stay tuned because the next episode is just around the corner.
That was my first experience.
Oh, I loved it. Y'all had me telling stories that I haven't even thought about. And
Thank you so much for having me here. It was a pleasure.
Like, I will have coffee with the two of you any day for the rest of my life. Like,